There is a level of mental and physical strength that feels unnatural to witness. Not loud, not aggressive, not performative. It is quiet, rooted, unmovable. When someone reaches this level, they don't react the way others do. They don't explain themselves. They don't rush. They don't bargain with reality. Pressure does not speed them up. Fear does not slow them down. Chaos does not enter their nervous system. They move when it is time to move. They wait when it is time to wait. And when action is required, there is no hesitation. People watching from the outside rarely understand what they are seeing. They say things like, "He's just built differently. She's lucky. He doesn't feel fear like normal people do." But that is never the truth. This level of strength is not genetic. It is not talent. It is not motivation. It is earned. And the price is so high, most people would rather mock it than pay it. Today, you are going to learn how one man reached this level over 400 years ago, why almost no one follows his method, and how the same system can still be applied, exactly as it was written to your own mind and body. This is not a motivational talk. This is not self-help. This is not philosophy for comfort. This is a manual, a method, a process of elimination. And if you stay until the end of this series, you will understand why true strength does not feel inspiring at first, why it isolates you, and why the final stage of mastery is the most frightening of all. Because once you cross this threshold, there is no going back to who you were. 400 years ago, during Japan's Tokugawa era, there lived a man who embodied this level of strength completely. His name was Miyamoto Musashi. He fought in over 60 duels. He began at the age of 13, and he never lost. Not once. But here is the part most people get wrong. Musashi was not the biggest. He was not the fastest. He was not the strongest in raw power. What made him terrifying was not his sword. It was his mind. A mind that did not flinch. A mind that did not hurry. A mind that did not cling to outcomes. And a body that could obey that mind under any condition. Before his death, Musashi wrote everything down. Not as poetry, not as moral teaching, but as strategy. That book is known as the Book of 5 Rings. And inside it is not inspiration. There is no encouragement, no affirmation. There is only this message, repeated in different forms. Remove what makes you weak. Remove what makes you dependent. Remove what makes you hesitate. Most people read Musashi looking for techniques. They look for tactics. They look for secrets. They miss the point completely. Musashi did not build strength by adding anything. He built it by subtracting. Before we go any further, you need to understand something important. This path is not for everyone. Not because it is impossible, but because it dismantles parts of your identity you are emotionally attached to. Excuses, comfort rituals, the version of you that negotiates with discomfort. Musashi's method does not care about your circumstances. It does not adapt to your moods. It does not wait for the right time, and that is why it works. In this first section, you are going to learn why most people confuse motivation with strength, and why that mistake keeps them weak, why discipline fails when it depends on conditions, and why the scariest kind of power is the kind that does not announce itself. In the next section, we will break down Musashi's first principle, the principle that destroys hesitation at the root. And in the final section, you will see what happens when strength stops being something you do and becomes something you are. If you feel uncomfortable already, that is a good sign. Discomfort is the signal that something unnecessary is about to be removed. Now, take a breath. Let the noise settle. And when you are ready, we will move into the first real threshold. Let's begin. The level of strength we are talking about does not begin with intensity. It does not begin with passion. It does not begin with inspiration. It begins with something far more uncomfortable. Removal. This is where most people fail. Not because they are incapable, but because they are unwilling to let go of the things that make them feel safe. Musashi understood something that modern culture refuses to accept. If your strength depends on conditions, you are not strong. If your discipline depends on motivation, you are not disciplined. If your calm depends on silence, you are not calm. And if your confidence depends on validation, you are not confident. You are supported. And support disappears the moment life turns hostile. Musashi's first real teaching is brutally simple. Do not depend on anything. No tools, no perfect environment, no special timing, because the enemy does not wait. Life does not pause for your readiness. Most people live as if strength is something that happens after the conditions are right, after the sleep improves, after the stress reduces, after the schedule clears. That moment never arrives. Musashi trained in rain, in heat, in cold, with wooden swords, with steel swords, with one sword, with two. Not because variety was impressive, but because dependence is weakness in disguise. This is where the modern mind resists. People say, I need the gym. I need quiet to focus. I need the right mindset. I need to feel ready. Musashi would have considered this fragile, because anything you need controls you. If silence controls your focus, noise defeats you. If comfort controls your discipline, difficulty defeats you. If rest controls your effort, fatigue defeats you. Strength begins the moment excuses stop being relevant. Musashi did not ask, how do I feel today? He asked, what must be done? That single shift separates warriors from spectators. Now let's bring this out of history and into reality. Imagine a man who lives entirely on reaction. He wakes up intending to change. He promises himself discipline. He plans transformation, but his execution collapses the moment friction appears. He avoids confrontation because it feels uncomfortable. He delays responsibility because stress rises. This is not laziness. This is an untrained nervous system. The body has learned that discomfort equals danger, so it pulls back. It hesitates. It seeks relief. Musashi's method attacks this at the root. Not with force, not with aggression, but with consistency without dependency. The first act of real training is small, not heroic, not impressive, and that is intentional, because the goal is not performance. The goal is reliability. Musashi understood that the body must learn one rule above all others. 0 is not allowed. Not today. Not ever. 5 steps count. 10 breaths count. 1 repetition counts. Because the nervous system is not trained by volume alone. It is trained by continuity. This is where people quit. Because they want results. They want proof. They want visible change. Musashi did not care about visible change. He cared about irreversibility. Once a habit becomes irreversible, effort disappears. The body moves before thought interferes. That is the beginning of frightening strength. As the body adapts, something unexpected happens. The mind starts to panic, not because the training is hard, but because identity begins to crack. The part of you that negotiates, complains, and delays, realizes it is being phased out. This is where people sabotage themselves. They miss a day by accident. They justify inconsistency. They declare balance. Musashi would call this attachment to weakness, because the ego prefers familiar suffering to unfamiliar discipline. Now we arrive at the second layer. The body is training, but the mind is still reactive. This is where Musashi introduces the concept that most people misunderstand. The still mind. Not calmness, not relaxation. Stillness under threat. Musashi wrote that the mind in battle should be no different than the mind at rest. This sounds impossible, until you understand how it is trained. You do not suppress fear. You do not fight anxiety. You observe it. Every time tension rises, you refuse to move away from it. No reaction, no story, no escape. Just sensation. Heart racing, jaw tight, chest heavy, and you remain present. This retrains the nervous system to separate discomfort from danger. Over time, the alarm stops triggering, not because the world is safer, but because you are. This is where strength becomes visible, not through dominance, not through volume, but through composure. People feel it before they understand it. Your voice does not change. Your posture does not collapse. Your decisions do not rush. This unsettles people, because most humans live inside emotional reflexes. When someone does not mirror their panic, their nervous system feels exposed. Musashi trained this relentlessly, not in theory, in action. He did not rise to the occasion. He eliminated the need to rise. When chaos arrived, there was nothing new to handle, only repetition. By now, something should be clear. This level of strength is not dramatic. It is quiet. It does not seek attention. It does not announce growth. It simply removes failure as an option. In the next section, we go where most teachings stop. What happens when strength no longer belongs to effort, discipline, or willpower, but becomes identity itself? This is where people either turn back or disappear from the ordinary world entirely. And this is where Musashi becomes truly terrifying. There is a final stage most people never reach, not because it is hidden, not because it is complex, but because it dissolves the last thing people are unwilling to let go of. The self that wants credit. Up until now, everything we've talked about still exists inside effort. Effort to train, effort to stay calm, effort to remain consistent. Even disciplined people live here. But Musashi did not stop at discipline. He moved beyond it. That is where his teachings become unsettling. Because at this level, strength no longer feels like strength. It feels ordinary. There is no internal dialogue, no negotiation, no inner victory speech. Action happens, and afterward, nothing lingers. Musashi described this as the moment when sword and self disappear. Not metaphorically. Functionally, most people believe mastery looks like intensity. They imagine clenched focus, effortful control, constant vigilance. That is not mastery. That is tension wearing discipline's clothing. True mastery is quieter than that. It is the absence of internal resistance. At this stage, training no longer feels like training, because there is nothing left that wants to avoid it. This is the part that sounds impossible until you experience it. You no longer force consistency. Inconsistency has simply been removed. Not suppressed. Not managed. Removed. Musashi reached this state because he stopped identifying with outcomes. Victory did not define him. Failure did not threaten him. Failure did not try to win. He eliminated the conditions under which losing was possible. This is a critical distinction. Trying to win creates urgency. Urgency creates mistakes. Trying not to lose creates presence. Presence creates precision. Musashi waited, observed, allowed the opening to appear, then ended it. No wasted movement. No wasted emotion. Absolute efficiency. Now bring this back to life. To work. To relationships. To your body. At this level, you stop trying to be exceptional. You simply stop being unreliable. You stop breaking promises to yourself. You stop creating loopholes. You stop negotiating with weakness. Not because you are strict, but because the part of you that wanted escape no longer exists. This is where something strange happens. People around you begin to feel uncomfortable. Not threatened. Not impressed. Exposed. Your presence reflects their avoidance. You don't lecture. You don't judge. You simply are. And that is harder to tolerate than criticism. Musashi wrote his final teachings alone, near death, with no audience, and no legacy to protect. He had already let go of identity. No need to be remembered. No need to be admired. Only clarity. His last writings point to one truth. When practice becomes who you are, you cannot lose discipline, because you are not using it. You cannot fall off the path, because there is no separation between path and self. This is the scariest level of mental and physical strength, not because it dominates others, but because it cannot be shaken. Stress does not control it. Praise does not inflate it. Failure does not destabilize it. It does not rush towards success. It does not retreat from difficulty. It simply continues. Most people never reach this level, not because they lack capacity, but because they stop too early. They want visible rewards. They want recognition. They want reassurance. Musashi wanted none of it, and that is why nothing could touch him. Now the question turns to you. Not what you want to become, but what you are willing to remove. Which dependency goes first? Which excuse loses authority? Which comfort no longer gets a vote? Because strength, like this, does not arrive dramatically. It arrives quietly, the moment inconsistency is no longer tolerated. If you found value here, subscribe to the channel. And before you go, ask yourself this. What is the first weakness you will eliminate? Not someday, but today. And as always, remember to stay in tune with your own mind frequency.